By show of hands, who of you at least sometimes has to either learn and or teach something? Okay, that was what I was hoping for, basically everybody. Then, how about your memory? Is your memory good? It feels like most people rather think it might be decent or even bad. It seems to be getting worse and worse. More and more people have their partners' names tattooed on their bodies. Yeah. Out of love, of course, sure. Well, on the contrary, there are memory athletes. Memory athletes can show astonishing feats. If I take this ordinary deck of playing cards and shuffle it, and then ask you to memorize the order of all 52 cards quickly, I guess that would be an impossible task for most. The world record for this task stands at just over 12 seconds. I can do it in 30 seconds on a good day. I'm a neuroscientist and a keynote speaker. I do research on and give lectures and trainings on memory all around the world. And I'm also a 7 times winner of the World Memory Championships with the German team. My message to you today is that we should include memory techniques in education on all levels. Can you imagine a world where students are passionate about learning? They think memorization, that's fun and easy, and they can study new words in a foreign language, dates and facts and history, complex concepts in math and science classes with no problem at all? I think such a world does not need to be imaginary. It can be very real. Memorization in our culture isn't valued too highly, currently at least. It's a bit different in Asia. Small anecdote. At the World Memory Championships 2013, the team from Mongolia, a pretty small country in Asia with just 2 million people, achieved rank number 3. They got 3rd in the nations table. And to honor that, when they flew home, they were welcomed in Mongolia by the Mongolian Prime Minister. The team captain, as a memory athlete, was Athlete of the Year of Mongolia, and once was a judge at MGT, like Mongolia's Got Talent, or something like this. The Philippines got 2nd. When they flew home, they were welcomed by national television, later invited to the parliament, and the best of the team had scholarships to be full-time professional memory athletes. My team, Germany, we won. Yes. I was picked up at the airport by my mom. Local news brought such a long article, but sadly misspelled my name. Yeah. I don't want to complain too much. I get my share of screen time in some TV shows to demonstrate what my sport is actually all about. And here's an interesting fact about memory athletes. They do not have any special talent. It's all about the techniques they use. And in my research, I could prove that is true. Last year, we published a paper in Neuron where we showed that the brains of memory athletes anatomically do not differ from a control group, but finding differences in the so-called functional brain connectivity. That basically means how different parts of the brain communicate. Even more, when I got to train some students in these techniques, and they went home to practice for 6 weeks, afterwards did not only their memory performance skyrocket, we found the same differences in functional brain connectivity back. Some might say, well, but why bother? I have a computer, a smartphone, the internet, I can look everything up. And isn't learning so much more than memory anyway? Well, yes and no. Because what you look up, you don't usually remember. And what you don't remember, you cannot understand either. And also to have an idea, you need memories. Probably you all know the tale how Newton came up with the theory of gravitation. One lovely autumn day in the late 1660s, he was spending in the garden of his parents, relaxing under a tree, when suddenly an apple fell off the tree and hit him on the head. And bang, gravitation. He knew it. There's even a word for this, eureka. It's said to come from Archimedes, who had a similar moment of brilliance. One day he stepped into the bathtub and thought, wait, the volume of the water rising must be equal to the volume of my body I just submerged in it. Eureka! Well, the tales leave out the fact that Newton and Archimedes thought about the underlying problems for years before they suddenly had a brilliant idea about it. And I think that's very important. My own journey into memory started in 2002. I was still a high school student. One evening I was watching TV, an entertainment program. A memory SD taught an actress some memory techniques, and I was fascinated. I thought, wow, this could be really valuable for my final exams. And otherwise, at least I can impress some girls with that. And it did indeed lead to me competing in my first memory competition not long after, but also helped me a lot being a student. A little bit already in high school, but in high school I was doing okay before, but I was far from best in class. In fact, I nearly failed 10th grade due to my English grades. And even though I still cannot pronounce TH correctly, I hope you agree it's quite decent by now. It changed a bit when I went on to university. I used memory techniques a lot and ended up studying 2 master's degrees in the time of 1, physics and computer science, which many people believe to be hard and memorization not to be so useful. Doing a combined degree with near perfect score and high distinction. Afterwards, I changed fields to psychology, did my PhD before I was 30, while still traveling the world, competing in memory, and spending most weekends on football fields. I'm now fluent in English and Dutch, and speak decent Mandarin, Chinese, and Spanish. And I hope this doesn't come across too braggy, because it's not about me, and I'm really convinced what I achieved can be achieved by every single high school student sitting in any school wherever right now. And I find it funny that we get our brain, but not the manual on how to use it best. That we can learn a way to think differently, and suddenly we learn better. It's kind of what led me into brain sciences. And if I talk about the memory, it's not true that we know everything about it in science, quite far from it. But some facts we do know. Like if I ask, where is the memory? Like, where in the brain is the hard drive? It sounds like an obvious question. If I would go here to the computer and open it, I would find a hard drive, a RAM, a processor. Distinct parts with clear functions. But not so much in the brain. To find the memory in the brain is quite a difficult task. In early times, neuroscience learned a lot by patients. A very famous one is HM. HM was a patient suffering from epilepsy. And in his case, the epileptic attacks came out of the hippocampus. And his surgeon in 1953 decided to remove the hippocampus on both sides of his brain. Surgery was kind of a success. Epilepsy was mostly cured. It was also a terrible failure because this patient afterwards suffered from a big memory problem. He could not form new long-term memories anymore. What does that mean? Well, at the day of surgery, he was 28. And what happened in his early years, he knew more or less as good as anyone else. But he couldn't form new long-term memories anymore. Actually got quite old. And even as an old man, he would wake up every morning thinking he's 28. And maybe getting scared when he looked into the mirror and saw an old face. By the way, exactly the opposite thing is happening nowadays to a lot of celebrities due to Botox. But that's something different. They made some interesting observations at HM. For example, he learned to play golf, which he had never done before in his life. And I imagine, after a while, it looked like this. They go to the golf course and ask him, did you ever play golf before? No, never. But it seems to be quite easy. He learned to make the golf swing better every time, without remembering that he ever did it before. Which taught us a lot about memories, that we have very different memory systems. And that memory is not, this is HM, that memory is not one place in your brain, but that the memory is in the connections. That the memory isn't a location, but a kind of a process. Or learning is a change happening in the brain. The memory is in the connections. And one of these memory systems that works really well is our visual memory. And if we now have something difficult to learn and make connections with the visual memory, suddenly it gets easy. Let me demonstrate it to you. And now you all have to join in, because I want to tell you a story. And you have to picture it, to visualize it, to see it happen. Please visualize here on the screen, suddenly a domain name comes up. And after you see this domain name coming up, a king walks on the stage. And the king says his name is Phil. And King Phil came here to teach us a class. And he starts his class by giving a lot of orders. For example, he orders a family that's sitting here in the front to come to the stage. And he goes to the family and says, I heard one of you is a genius, but be specific. Who of you is it? One of you is a genius. Tell me specifically who is it. Okay. Well, if you pictured the story, it should now be possible for you to answer the following questions. And I want to hear really everybody, so shout it in as loud as you can. On the screen, you can still appeared a domain name. And then who walked in? A king. And the king had a name. His name is? Phil. And Phil said, I'm here to teach a class. And he started to give some orders. Well done. And he orders whom on stage? A family, right. And he goes to the family and said, I heard one of you is a genius. But be specific, who is it? Well done. It was a little weird, okay, but it worked. By the way, you just memorized the 8 ranks of taxonomy in biology in correct order. From domain for domain, to kingdom for king, to phylum for phil, class, order, family, genius for genus, and specific for species. Congratulations. Please go ahead. And this is just a very small example for a mnemonic technique. I don't have the time to go into all the advanced methods. But what I find important is this works for well more than just a list of words, as sometimes people assume. Because the techniques don't have to stay linear in itself. Let's just add on. Let's say you still look back to the screen, and there was a domain name, but now the domain name disappears and an arch appears. Now join me. Visualize this arch is now covered in bacteria. It's covered in bacteria, and at the beginning of the arch, you are in your car wondering if it's safe to drive over. And now we added the 3 domains we have, which is arch, archaea, bacteria, and your car, eukarya. Just like this. You can build upon it. There's actually quite a number of TEDx talks on memory techniques available on YouTube you can watch. And many have a lot of views and sometimes a few comments where people say, well, I watched a video on this, or maybe even a few, and I still don't know how to apply it in education. And to me, it sounds like if I were standing here saying, well, I watched this video of this fitness trainer, and I still don't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You need to put in some training. And you need to maybe go ahead of the 12 minutes of a TED Talk knowing the methods. But once you did that, you really develop a skill. Memory can be a skill you keep for a lifetime, which is really valuable. So my idea, which I think it's worth remembering, at least to anyone who's learning and or teaching sometimes, is let us include memory techniques to education, to schools, universities, and education on the private and business life. Thank you so much.